great to be here today. I appreciate y'all making the time to come, and we're going to talk a little bit about sustainability and data. We're going to try to keep it interesting. We're going to probably talk about some things that may be a little bit different twist on sustainability. So we'll get started. All right, so we got to deal with reality in this world, and the reality is as I speak with our AVP of sustainability, sustainability has become a trigger word in many cases. So we have groups very pro-sustainability, groups that are, somewhat anti-sustainability. And not dealing and recognizing that that's a fact probably puts us all at a disadvantage. So I'm proposing that we have a new sustainability model that rebuilds connection by focusing on measurable impact and shared goals, and that it has much more of a financial component. My goal is to win people over regardless of their ideology, because I need them all. I don't need half of the people agreeing, half of the people disagreeing. I need at least a good solid 70, 80%, in the bucket. But so we got all this data, and we get and collect the data, and it sits sometimes in various systems we have. Maybe we have a use for it, maybe we don't, but it's an overwhelming flood of data. And if we're going to really make the kind of decisions we need to make, we've got to funnel it down, we've got to simplify it, and we've got to really prioritize automation, I think, to drive some of the details. So I see, though, financial viability as much of the common ground on sustainability. And I will add to say, right now, there is no right or wrong way. Sustainability is not a religion. There are, and if you want to look at it it's fractured like many of the religions are. But when you look at financial piece, there's a segment in the middle. And each campus is going to have its own drivers that determine, so for example, solar may be really cost effective and practical in one part of the country, not as practical in another. We're looking at district energy level heat pumps, not because I can make that much money on the heat pumps, but I don't want to be pushing steam around anymore, and I'm going to have to dig the whole thing up, so I might as well switch to hot water. If I switch to hot water, then I have a good opportunity to save about $5-6 million a year to make it with steam. So as we make it with heat pumps. So as we look at how we kind of think about things, it's not a one-size-fits-all, and we don't need to really judge each other by who is the most sustainable by what we do, what the standards are. And that's tough. The magazines, the various rating systems like to say, your sustainability is right, yours is wrong, or mine's better than yours. I think that when you drive it through the financial lens, it starts coming clear a little more what makes sense. So I'm looking to make that as a bridge. So we want to, leverage in our resources through metrics. I think we've all gone through various parts of the business where we've done a lot of work with KPIs. We've talked about, what are the standards that need to drive our business. And that's no different than what we're talking about here. Won't spend a lot of time on it, but our campuses are very data rich. There's just tons of information. But this is where what I see as a direction differs than maybe what the industry sees as a direction. And this is kind of why I like this particular group, because this is a group of very different people from around the country, leaders coming together and talk about these things. But we've seen a lot of push for, Internet of Things, IoT devices everywhere. Let's just add more sensors, lots and lots of sensors. Now, I don't calibrate all the sensors I've got. I don't even know if all the sensors I've got are working. I got millions of data points on my system. I'm not going to start calibrating all of those sensors either. So I think the real thing is when we look at simplification of systems for reliability so that what we have just works, and then we take the data that we can get off of what we got, leverage it with a lot of the new technology that's coming out with some of the things on AI and other things. I don't need to completely censor things up, load it up with so many things that I can't maintain. And so the key is, though, of the data we have, let's find the algorithms and relationships. And so when I used to be, before I was at Georgia Tech years ago, I was the energy engineer for Florida State. And one of the things that I found in there was amazing how you could just map the outdoor weather temperature, weather information, and you could tell what the campus was going to do at energy pretty reliably just off that by itself. And so I found that the simpler, the better on these things. More likely your people will know what you're doing. More likely you'll be able to get the staff you need to do it. So don't make it too complicated. And I think that if we take that, we can develop many of the insights that we need to drive sustainability. So it's about finding those algorithms. And anyone never deal with Carnot maps and digital electronics? It was about simplifying the logic. You took all the things and you narrowed the logic down. So I also think that using this data then helps us make good, sustainable decisions. So we'd like to focus on high ROI projects because guess what? If I take a project and I can get my money back before the item wears out, I can reinvest that money. I can do it over and over and over again, and I will do more to impact sustainability than I will by doing something that is, maybe just what the president might want or something like that. And I think that pushing back with the data to support that becomes a really important part of what we're trying to do. But it does require discipline, and it does require multi-year effort. I liked what I saw here at ASU about all the expansion they've had over the years. And you look at what they've done with campus after campus and expansion after expansion, you had to have a good plan to be working on that. And I think for doing sustainability in our campuses that we have as well. So what I see though is automation is a key for multiple reasons. So for example, we have all this data. We have all these systems. I have work management system. I've got the BAS system. I've got space systems. I've got construction systems. I've got every kind of system that's got some level of data, financial systems for the organization. And so we're starting to map all of those databases together. Now, not a complete link and integration because that would be a disaster, but something that gives us different data insights than what we've been able to have. So if we can, for example, and I'm not talking about as many things as just driving where a cost per unit is, like how long does it take me to maintain something, those are fine. But really looking at things like how much time does it take to get the work done? So that's what our RPA, robotic process automation things are about. Because if I can take more time off of my team and automate as much of that, then I can take that automation time and build more time into solving other problems that I want to solve. So when I look at that and analyze then where my biggest impacts are on sustainability projects, like I think when Raj was talking about space utilization just a minute ago, that becomes very important. We've gone to tons of progressive workspaces because we had that same problem, lots of empty offices, and that data can be helpful in that. But even with those initial progressive space projects, everybody wanted to continue to add more sensors, and I don't. So we're going to try to move into other data sets we already have. But I think that we need to balance the cost against the tools. If I want to go and anyone much using software as a service types of things for almost any of your major packages now, costs are going up. They're going up just like everything else is. And so balancing the cost of those tools against what we are doing, it becomes really, really important, because if the tool costs you more than the benefits you're going to get out of it, then that's a problem. So what I'm really looking for, though, is this strategic framework, connect and sustainability. It's about, we had two great speakers, the person from the Verve and DMC, that talked about connection with their community. This is the same kind of connection that I want to do with sustainability with the community, because that and many other issues have become more divisive. And it's harder for me to get consensus on the billions of dollars I need to transform the campus over the next several years. If I'm only, for example, state of Georgia, highly conservative state government, and then you have campuses that tend to be, more liberal. Well, guess where a lot of my money's got to come from? I got to get it from the state. And if I can convince and buy them as partners, not as enemies or people that we're fighting against, but partners, by linking financial as a shared language that we can understand, that we can work together and not get so preachy about what we're trying to do. They actually told me on one of our last projects that I got some funding for, they said, you can have the money, just don't write it up the normal way that tech does, which is very flowery about how we're going to solve the whole world's problems if this one project goes through. But I think that finding and knowing the people in your campus communities and in your funders, whether it's a philanthropy or whether it's state in our case, that is the key, because if they don't feel a part of your team, they may not give you the money you need. And so that's why I'm looking at building that network, because connectivity is so important. We've lost it a lot. I mean, when you go through a campus and you don't see people on it in a lot of the offices, maybe you've got them connected, but you might not. So what I like to do is take the tools we have, fully leverage those first before I go out and buy another system that's going to promise me that I can do all these things. Leverage the data, simplify the processes so they're reliable, and then that's I think been a better thing. And then what I'm wanting to do is build connections that power sustainability. So when we look at the climate action plan that we just did, it is a very practical climate action plan. It was done by, people who are climate, experts. Our AVP of sustainability led a team. She's fantastic at putting that together. But I had to get the money to start implementing the plan. And I could, like, I don't really understand net zero, because why do you have to have net zero if zero waste can be 90% diversion rate? Maybe net zero could be something less than zero. So, but that's just a different swing to it. But I think when we look at our climate action plan, there are so many things in there that we have a good financial backing on, that we can do, that we can agree on. Why do I have to bother and fight over the ones that are maybe a little suspicious to some folks on the team? Let's get the ones that we can agree on done. Let's get those done. Build the thing. I'm kicking back the ones that aren't financially valuable back to the research community. Wait a second. Y'all are researchers, figure it out. Give me something that I can make financial sense of with this thing. That's what researchers are supposed to do. So by focusing on what you can do that makes sense, that benefits the absolute broadest section of stakeholders that you have in your organization, that is the power. That's bringing people together, that's bringing community together, and that's really what I'm trying to change on our sustainability model. But it takes that data to do it, and it's not, and it, a lot of the arguments over what's, legit and not legit, I don't get into that. I get into taking the systems we have, taking the data off those systems, merging different data sets to draw conclusions, simple automation things that can buy me time to do more of the analysis and get my systems where we can drive meaningful, actionable data. And that's basically the crux of what we're doing at Tech. It's working really well. We're buying in people that were not previously bought into sustainability at all. And if you stay in your own group and you ask them what they think about it, they're going to say, well, I think you're right. And then you go to the other group and then they're like, what in the world? These people are crazy over here. They don't seem to really, relate at all. And it's because we've become too isolated. We've gone home. We didn't all come back to work. We forgot how to communicate with other people sometimes. Bringing that back. and layering it with data, use some financial tools as a way to make what we do make sense for the broadest number of people in the team, will really start leveraging your sustainability program. So it takes data, people, and a lot of focus. So that's basically it. Are there any questions or answers, or any questions that anyone would like to have on either what we're doing or comments on what you're doing? And it's a safe space. I tell my team at work, argue with me all the time. I like to challenge us to have safe space to discuss anything we need to.
Yeah, I appreciate your perspective. Question would be, how do you determine the ROI on some of these and get the alignment from state to actually getting the performance you want when you think about ultimately reducing greenhouse gas emissions and the issue do we really have with climate?
Well, so what's great is, like, if you're talking to people who don't believe in sustainability, just don't use greenhouse gas in the vocabulary, but they'll go for energy savings every time. And so that's really what I do. I try to stay away from things that have become, more triggering to other folks. Because here's the thing, my goal, I'm not an evangelist that I'm going to go and try to convince someone to change their beliefs. That's not my job. I just want to do my work. I want to get my projects done. I want to make things happen. So if talking to someone in a language they understand helps me do that, that's what I'm going to do. So I like to take and make my equations real simple. So how many have ever gone through a performance contract, like with an ESCO or something? And you've seen these complicated, sometimes M&V things, and depending on the project, you might look at it and say, I'm not sure if I made money or I lost money on this deal. I make it all very simple. I cut out most of the other things with it to where there's no room, and then I keep my ROIs very simple anyway. How much it costs, how much I saved, not a lot of, squinting my eyes and looking and bending backwards and trying to make myself see something. If I can't see it, if it's not big enough on paper, I go to the next project because I've got enough good projects with big returns on them that I don't need to get into controversial stuff. And so that's probably my strategy. I've used it the last 30 years, so it's worked so far. So.
James, what are your, based on your best practices, what is a KPI that you develop based on your methodology?
So I guess the mine is real simple. It's the capital that I'm getting towards funding my programs, because I need the capital to get. Now, each of those things I like to see generally paybacks under 10 years when I can get them, but I'll take longer on something like changing out hot water loops on the system. So if I'm going to throw some high temp HDPE in the ground for a hot water system, I'm going to get 100 years out of that pipe. And so if it takes me 30 years to recover against that, I'm good with that. So I try to look at, if it's something I'm trying to get energy saving dollars now, I try to do more of a 10-year. And then otherwise, I base it on offsetting against the capital cost I'm going to have to spend and when I return my money within a reasonable cycle. So it's about, like I said, about 30 years on my hot water system that I'm putting in. But
okay, well, thank you, Jim.